story this morning. Debate at the Rhode Island State House went into the early morning hours, but just before 12:30 this morning, the House passed the $8.7 billion budget with a 63-11 vote. It will now be sent to the Senate, and they will take it up on Monday.
Much of the debate last night centered on whether to pay back the 38 Studios bonds. The state owes close to $100 million to investors of Curt Schilling's failed video game company. Here's NBC 10's Brian Crandall.
As expected, the measure to pay back the next installment of the 38 Studios bonds, more than $12 million, passed the House of Representatives. In the end, 60-15, but also as expected, there was vigorous debate beforehand, as opponents didn't think that taxpayers should be on the hook for the state-backed loan to Curt Schilling's failed video game company. They called for an investigation into how the deal went down.
We created this debacle, and yet we're not going to get to the bottom of it in this chamber? Come on, the people deserve more than that.
And we owe them answers as to what happened to their $100+ million, which is what will ultimately be paid, if not more.
But an overwhelming majority of their colleagues voted against that investigation. House leadership said there's already an investigation by state police, and those in support of paying back the money say to not do so could cost a lot more in the long run, as it would hurt the state's borrowing power.
It's not quantifiable. We can't measure it. We just know it's bad. And it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
And again, in the end, overwhelming support to pay the bond back.
There are some segments of society that are just angry about the issue, and they can't separate that anger from the state's responsibility. But the House of Representatives did the responsible thing with a resounding vote.
Interestingly, former Speaker Gordon Fox voted with the majority to pay back the money. The budget now goes to the Senate, and this issue could come up in future years as the future installments come due. I'm Brian Crandall, NBC 10 News at the State House.
Well, there were some other important issues at the State House that led to heated debate. Much of the controversy had to do with taxes.
But there was a delay in the action. The electronic vote tally board broke, so they had to break for more than a half hour so it could be fixed. Here's more from the other Brian Crandall.
And they're off. Budget night in the House. The perfect attire for the climate, a tie with $100 bills on it and a short-sleeved shirt. Because it's almost always hot in here in more ways than one.
How many more minutes are we going to have to listen to this?
Among the most debated items, raising the gas tax by a penny so the Secaucus bridge toll can be eliminated and to fund road and bridge repairs.
This is not going to be a hardship on them. We're talking about, for my big car, $13 a year.
Just every time we turn around, we're constantly increasing the cost upon our constituents.
Also contentious, a plan from the Democratic leadership to cut the corporate tax rate from 9% to 7%. Some Republicans were the biggest cheerleaders.
We need to change the perception of this state. The perception is we are the worst state to do business in.
Some businesses would have to pay in other ways, as they'd now be required to report out-of-state income too. That tax cut did pass, despite critics on the left claiming the plan only helps a small number of bigger businesses. They would like to see a smaller cut more evenly spread out.
And help those smaller businesses, the startups, the mom and pop businesses that could use that extra assistance.
Another tax cut that passed, a break on the estate tax or death tax, though opponents argue it just benefits a very few rich people.
I prefer that we take this time and this money right now to invest it in building in our infrastructure.
Supporters, though, claim it will keep wealthy taxpayers in the state, therefore raising revenue in the long run, and any cash, they say, would help.
But if you're going to eat an elephant, you got to start one bite at a time. I mean, this is a step in the right direction.
Also passing a $45 million courthouse parking garage in Providence, and a measure barring cities and towns from setting their own minimum wage, like Providence is talking about doing. I'm Brian Crandall, NBC 10 News at the State House.
Some of the other items in this year's budget include the fact that it keeps pace with the education funding plan for the state. It adds $35 million for education over last year's budget, $35 million for the construction of Rhode Island Public Transit Authority hubs at the Garrahy Complex and the Amtrak station in Providence. Also $18 million in improvements to the Roger Williams Park and Zoo, and $60 million for a runway extension at TF Green Airport. House lawmakers eliminated the historic preservation tax credit program that saved $52 million.
The Providence